Hi, I'm Jane and I'm on the board of Dying with Dignity Victoria. I'm here with a very special person, an amazing woman, Cheryl, who supported her late father, Jim, through his voluntary assisted dying experience. Over the years, Dying with Dignity Victoria has brought you stories about individuals who died in horrific ways because they were not provided with a legal and compassionate way of ending their suffering at a time and manner of their own choosing. Sadly, people are still being diagnosed with terminal medical conditions, but the good news is that because voluntary assisted dying is now a legal end of life choice for some individuals who are deemed eligible, they no longer have to suffer unnecessarily, enduring a prolonged and inhumane death. Such is the story of Cheryl's dad, Jim. Cheryl generously provided us with his story. It was beautifully written and emotionally charged, and we posted it on our website. The feedback has been overwhelming. Thank you, Cheryl, for joining us today. We really, really appreciate this. And I'll start by saying, please tell us a little bit about your dad, Jim.
My dad, Jim, was not the most fluffy, cuddly of people. He was a very solitary man. He was a man that independence and doing things for himself was his primary goal. He didn't have a whole huge range of interests and scope, but the things that he did love were bike riding, gardening, walking his beautiful dog, his car, the very simple pleasures. He was an amazing man, a very quiet man, very well-read man, a very intelligent man, but a very passive man in many ways.
Right. And look, tell us, if you're happy to, just a little bit about his illness and at what stage he considered voluntary assisted dying and how he actually found out about the existence of this process.
Yep. So Dad has had many experiences with cancer over the last 20 years. He's had laryngeal cancer, he's had kidney cancer, he's had bladder cancer, all of which he'd fought, had treatment for, he'd been very unwell, but had successfully beaten, or so we thought. We found that his kidney cancer had metastasized, and he had found his walking became really uncoordinated, and when we went to ED, they flew him down to Melbourne. He had a tumour that was constricting his spinal cord, affecting his coordination. He also had lesions on his brain, so we were in very much a state of, I guess, we weren't surprised that it had come back, but the different presentation was really different. So Dad went down, did the surgery to make sure he could free up as much of his spinal cord as he could, but it just didn't work the way he had hoped it would work, and he was left with the prospect of being immobile and not having the ability to walk, which to him was worse than anything he'd been through. He'd been through so much. He'd through his cancers, he'd given up his ability to eat and drink. He used a peg tube, so didn't get to eat that favourite food anymore or drink that favourite drink. He had issues with speaking from his laryngeal cancer, so he fought very, very hard. So to find that it didn't matter how hard he fought this time, he was not going to be able to regain his mobility. So while in Melbourne, which again is 3.5 hours away from our hometown, so I was down there with Dad as well, and we were just, I guess, a bit at the mercy of the physicality part. So having the surgery, removing what they could of the tumour, we really had no idea of what kind of cancer it was, what the prognosis was. They weren't really focused on that. They were just focused on getting Dad structurally okay. And when he realised that he wasn't going to regain his movement, he then became very, very set in, oh, why can't they just give me a needle and be done with it? Why can't I just want this over? I'm done. I've had enough. And it was a side of Dad that I've never seen. Dad's always been very set in his ways. He's always been very stubborn, very sure of his path. And although not a really positive and optimistic person all the time, he was always very sure that he was going to be able to push through. So it was a little bit different, but it was very evident that Dad's words were, I'm a realist. I know that it's a fairy tale for me to get up and walk, and it doesn't matter what I do. So to hear him sort of say that was a bit of a, not a surprise, but I guess it just hit home that Dad realised that this was it. This was his end, and he was okay. So we then, I had no idea of where to go with that, and the surgeons really just kept, oh, it'll be right, mate, and you'll be right, and really didn't hear what he was saying. So I'd looked at some advanced care planning, and then in my Google searches and trying to find out a bit of information of what could be done, the advanced care planning information did note that it couldn't include anything about voluntary assisted dying, which made me go, oh, hang on, I remember this. This was a big thing just a little while ago. So I then tried to find some more information out about that, and it wasn't until Dad then we finally asked too many questions and couldn't get answers, and they sent the surgeon around to see us, and Dad said pretty specifically, look, mate, if I treated my dog the way you guys are treating me, I'd be put in jail. Like, well, this is wrong. And at that point, the surgeon finally understood what he was saying. I'm done. I just want this to be over. And it was at that point that they finally understood, oh, okay, right, this is what he's talking about. So then they called the voluntary assisted dying person within the hospital, within the counselling team, and then she arranged to meet with us, or meet with Dad first, and that was how we found out about it.
All right. And look, I've just got to say, Cheryl's dad only died last month, so this is very, very fresh, and just wonderful that you are, informing people about this. How did the process unfurl for you, and were there any bumps along the way? How did you find the medical professionals and people you encountered on this path?
Yeah, sure. The only bumps really seemed to be, the process unfolded in that the VAD contact at the Alfred went to speak with Dad. Dad is very, he finds it physically difficult to talk because of his laryngeal cancer, so it's quite tiring for him. He talks in a whisper. People quite often try to finish his sentences. So even having a conversation with a counsellor who probably should have communicated a little bit better and understood his difficulties in communicating, he still found that quite frustrating. So then I guess I really took on that role almost of interpreter, almost trying to be that person in the middle that I believe I had a total understanding of and comprehension of what Dad wanted, and was really happy to advocate for him and push that. So I guess the process really then went on hold while we then tried to get Dad back to Warrnambool. So he wanted to come back to Warrnambool. He'd decided then that, look, this is not going to be a treatment thing. This is going to be a get me home and palliative and get me comfortable. I want to go back to see my dog. So we concentrated on getting him back out of Melbourne, back to hospital in Warrnambool. And from there, the process was amazing. The communication, the ease of which, as soon as we got back and Dad spoke to the Warrnambool-based voluntary assisted dying person, it was the first time he felt someone was listening to him. And probably to see Dad's frustration in Melbourne, where he just wasn't being heard. He wasn't allowed to speak, and when he did, he was really not heard. So to hear him actually, be acknowledged, and for someone to say, I understand what you're talking about, and it's actually it's called voluntary assisted dying, and we can help you if that's what you want to do. We have the tools, we have the means. Let's have a talk about it. And to see Dad sit back in his bed, breathe a sigh of relief and say, finally, someone's listening. And that gave Dad a renewed energy and vigor, and just a willingness to follow a process. Dad was not a very good person at following processes or ticking boxes or doing things the right way just because you have to. He was quite an individual that way. But the process itself was great. The medical professionals that were involved down here in Warrnambool were amazing. Every single person, whether it was from the hospital and the nursing staff giving him back the power to do his own feeds and do it as he wanted, or whether it was the specific VAD people. So the medical professionals involved, they were very thorough in their explanations of what it meant. They didn't fluff it up. They made sure Dad understood the reality of what he was asking for. They were very clear in the process, all of their roles and responsibilities, and Dad's responsibilities as well as a consumer. They were very clear in timeframes. They didn't give him any false assurances that it was going to be done by this date, or every step of the way was great. We had all of the information that we felt we needed, and I felt, I must say for myself and my family as well, my sister and brother, we all felt extremely supported and cared for in this whole process. It was always the point of focus to make sure that not only was Dad okay, but were we okay as well. So it was great.
That is just so wonderful to hear, and it's just lovely to hear you being so positive and having had such a great experience, because so often, people speak out only when something goes wrong and we hear the negatives, and just to hear your story is just so uplifting. It's fantastic. I mean, your dad's story is extremely sad, don't get me wrong, but it has got that uplifting part. And I must say, a lot of your story was very, very, very sad, but no one could fail to have been moved by the story of Dudley, your dad's greyhound dog, and the love he had for the dog, and the loyalty the dog showed to your dad when he was dying and after he died. And I've just got to ask you the question, how is Dudley now that your dad has died?
Dudley is good. So it did take Dudley a little while. Her loyalty and their love for each other was just so visible and tangible. Every time I took her into the hospital, which was, again, thank you, Warrnambool Hospital, for allowing that. But she was straight there, her head into Dad's hand. And again, you could just see him relax. And then, I mean, at the end, right at the end of it, she was right there with Dad as he took his medication and as he went to sleep and as he passed away. And then when the nurses were in fact, doing what they needed to do with Dad afterwards, Dudley didn't move. And the nurses moved around Dudley and they gave Dudley the space that she needed. She's had some really sad days, and we've both comforted each other a fair bit, I think. Yeah, and no, she's great. She's she's a beautiful dog. She was actually just inside eating some extra food because she has lost a little bit of weight since. Wouldn't we all like to do that after COVID? But so she gets a lot of extra TLC. So she's lovely.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
And Cheryl, do you feel since your dad's death you have received a lot of support from friends, family, and even medical professionals who you encountered on the way?
Yeah, definitely. I've been really lucky to, I have absolutely been. I've had a number of calls from the hospital just to make sure that that I'm okay after all of the process, which has been lovely. I didn't think that was a thing that people did, and particularly I think my nurse friends who have understood, I guess, more the complexities and all that sort of thing have been amazing. So yeah, I've been very, very lucky.
Oh, look, that's wonderful. And look, at this stage, I might just add that Dying with Dignity Victoria, we've set up a support group for family and friends of loved ones who have died choosing voluntary assisted dying as their end of life option. And I've got to emphasise, this is not a counselling group, but it's a group comprising of individuals who have shared a similar experience so that they can talk with others. And Cheryl has very kindly volunteered to act as one of these supporting people. And we ask you, if anyone's interested, if anyone listening to this is interested or they know of someone, please contact us through our website. Now, the other part of your story, which was very, very emotional and had a profound impact on me, was the story of the sunflower seeds. Your dad grew sunflower seeds, and after he died, you decided the way you'd spread his voluntary assisted dying story was to sow the seed, so to speak, with the seeds and give them to people. I think it's the most inspiring story. Would you like to just elaborate a little bit on that one as well, please?
Sure. Again, it was something that was important to Dad, because I think we realised how hard it actually was to find information about voluntary assisted dying and how many negative connotations there were, and that it's still not seen in a very positive light by a lot of people. It was quite astounding. But Dad, as being such a huge gardener and that being part of his life, he had mentioned before he became very unwell that he had a big bag of dried sunflowers. So we sort of thought, okay, that's good, no worries. But then at the end, when we wanted to say thank you to the nursing staff, we sort of thought, bunches of flowers, they last for a week and then they're thrown in the bin, and a card. Dad's not much of a card writer, but so we decided to, pop some sunflowers in and write a bit of Dad's story to give to the nursing staff. They've put it up in their tea room, which is lovely, and bagged up just a heap of small envelopes of seeds just to say, please plant these sunflowers with kindness in your heart and the thought of a positive voluntary assisted dying experience, and to please make sure that all of our loved ones and people that are important to us know that this is a choice. It's not good, it's not bad, it's just a choice. And that was really important to Dad, to make sure that people knew about it, because he knew what he wanted, but he didn't know how to say it, or about the concept itself. So we're hoping to raise awareness through that. We've got a little table out in our laneway here, and when it warms up a little bit, we'll be putting the sunflowers out with Dad's story there for neighbours and whoever to share. And hopefully that when they see the sunflowers growing in their garden, or someone asks them, where did you get your seeds from, they tell that little bit of that story to say, oh, it was just something about, I don't know, some guy used voluntary assisted dying, and that it's a conversation. That's what it needs to be. It's not about Dad, it's about having the conversation about voluntary assisted dying and making sure people know that. And that, I think you touched on it before, Jane, saying that so often we hear the negative, we hear the complaints, we hear the horrible things, we hear when things go wrong. And that's why I think it was important for us to tell our story, because this is how it should be. This is how it can be for so many people. And that is really important.
Oh, look, Cheryl, I have just got so much admiration for you. And your story, as I said, of the sunflower seeds is totally inspiring. I will never be able to look at a sunflower without thinking of you.
Good, message done.
In fact, I'm going to put an order in for some of the seeds, if that's all right. I'd like to thank you on behalf of Dying with Dignity Victoria, and not only us, but for all the people who will listen to this. You will help them so much. It's just been such a privilege to talk to you, and I just can't thank you enough.
No, thank you.
I urge everyone to read Cheryl's story, which is on our website, and buy a sunflower and perhaps an order. We might give an address and get an order in for some sunflower, to all the sunflowers.
Absolutely.
Anyway, thank you so much, Cheryl. You've just been absolutely amazing.
Thank you.